Have you ever looked around and felt as if everyone else received a map for life, and somehow you missed your copy? Someone you know just got married. Someone bought a home. Another person launched a business, changed careers, or seems completely certain about who they are. Meanwhile, you feel stuck. You may be trying hard. You may even have things to be proud of. But an uncomfortable thought keeps returning. I should be further ahead by now. If that sounds familiar, this video is for you. Because feeling behind in life usually isn't an objective measurement of where you are. It's a psychological experience created by comparison, expectations, fear, and the stories you've learned about how a life is supposed to unfold. Today, we'll explore why this feeling becomes so powerful and how to move through it without pretending that everything is fine. Most people carry an invisible timeline in their minds. By a certain age, you're supposed to have a career, then a serious relationship, financial stability, a home, confidence, a sense of purpose. The exact milestones vary depending on your family, culture, and social environment, but the message is often the same. A successful life unfolds in the correct order, at the correct speed. The problem is that this timeline rarely accounts for reality. It doesn't account for illness, grief, financial hardship, discrimination, family responsibilities, trauma, economic instability, or simply needing more time to understand yourself. It also doesn't account for the fact that human development is not standardized. Some people discover their calling at 20, others at 50. Some build stability early and question everything later. Others struggle for years, then create a life that finally fits them. But when your internal timeline says, this should have happened already, every delay can begin to feel like a personal failure. Notice the language of feeling behind. I should have, I was supposed to, or by now I ought to. These statements reveal that you aren't only responding to your present circumstances, you're comparing your real life with an imagined version of your life. And imagined lives have one major advantage. Nothing ever goes wrong in them. Human beings naturally evaluate themselves through comparison. We look at other people to understand what is normal, possible, desirable, or dangerous. This helped our ancestors navigate social groups. Today, however, that same tendency operates in an environment filled with carefully selected information. You don't simply compare yourself with your closest friends anymore. You compare yourself with thousands of people, and usually you compare your entire life with their most visible achievement. You see the promotion, not the years of uncertainty behind it. You see the wedding, not the private conflicts. You see the successful business, not the financial support, luck, failed attempts, or anxiety that may have accompanied it. Even when you know that social media is curated, your emotional brain can still interpret what it sees as evidence. Look, it says, everyone is moving except you. This creates a distorted sample. The people doing something visible appear frequently, while those struggling quietly remain hidden. You begin to treat exceptional progress as average progress. Ordinary life then feels like underachievement. Comparison also becomes especially painful when someone similar to you succeeds. A stranger becoming successful may feel inspiring, but when a former classmate reaches a milestone you wanted, their success can feel like a verdict on your choices. If they could do it, why haven't I? But similarity in age or background does not mean similarity in circumstances. You may have started in different places, faced different obstacles, wanted different things, or paid different prices. You're seeing a shared timestamp, not a shared journey. There's an important difference between thinking, I'm not where I want to be, and thinking, there must be something wrong with me. The first thought concerns your circumstances. The second attacks your identity. When feeling behind turns into shame, a temporary situation begins to look like proof of permanent inadequacy. You aren't just unemployed. You're a failure. You aren't just single. You're unlovable. You aren't just uncertain. You're incapable. Shame compresses a complicated life into one cruel conclusion. I am the problem. This can create a painful feedback loop. You feel ashamed, so you withdraw. Because you withdraw, you lose opportunities for support, information, and connection. Your isolation then becomes more evidence that you're falling behind. Some people respond differently. They overwork. They become obsessed with productivity, trying to outrun the fear that they aren't enough. Rest feels irresponsible. Other people's achievements feel threatening. Every goal immediately produces another goal. From the outside, they may look ambitious. Internally, however, they are negotiating with their self-worth. They aren't only trying to succeed, they're trying to earn permission to feel acceptable. But if achievement is being used to repair shame, no achievement will feel secure for very long. The mind will simply move the finish line. Psychologically, feeling behind often emerges from the gap between your real self and your ideal self. Your real self is who you believe you are today. Your ideal self is the person you think you should become. A gap between them isn't automatically harmful. In fact, that gap can create motivation. It gives you a direction. But when the ideal self is unrealistic, borrowed from someone else, or tied to a rigid deadline, the gap becomes a source of chronic disappointment. You may be pursuing a version of success you never consciously chose. Perhaps your family taught you that security matters above everything else. Maybe your social circle treats marriage as proof of maturity. Perhaps the internet convinced you that every passion must become a profitable business. So it's worth asking, do I actually want the life I'm grieving? Sometimes the answer is yes. You genuinely want the relationship, career, stability, or family you don't yet have. That desire deserves respect. But sometimes you don't want the milestone itself. You want what you believe it would prove about you. You want the job to prove that you're talented. The relationship to prove that you're lovable. The money to prove that you made the right choices. Understanding this distinction matters, because a goal cannot permanently give you an identity you refuse to grant yourself without it. You might assume that feeling behind would make a person move faster. Sometimes it does, but often it causes paralysis. When you believe you have plenty of time, taking one small step feels meaningful. When you believe you're years behind, that same step can feel humiliatingly inadequate. You think, what difference will this make? I should have started 5 years ago. The size of the imagined gap overwhelms your ability to act in the present. Perfectionism makes this worse. Because you already feel late, you may believe your next decision has to be flawless. You can't afford another mistake. You need the perfect career, perfect plan, perfect partner, or perfect opportunity. But the demand for certainty prevents experimentation. And experimentation is how clarity usually develops. Then, if checking your finances, applying for a job, or attending a social event activates shame, avoiding it brings short-term relief. But that relief teaches your brain to keep avoiding the situation. Eventually, you're not stuck because you lack potential. You're stuck because movement has become emotionally associated with exposure and failure. The answer is not to shame yourself into action. The answer is to make action psychologically safe again. That begins with steps small enough to complete without requiring a total transformation of your identity. Not every feeling of being behind is irrational. Sometimes you lost time, and perhaps your mental health consumed years. Maybe you stayed in the wrong relationship, made choices you regret, cared for someone else, or survived circumstances that left little room for growth. It can be dismissive to respond to that pain with, everyone has their own timeline. Yes, everyone has a different timeline, but you may still need to grieve. You may need to grieve opportunities you didn't have, years that felt stolen, or a younger version of yourself who expected life to look different. Grief is not the same as surrender. Grief says, this mattered to me, and it hurts that it didn't happen. Without grief, people often remain trapped in an endless argument with the past. They replay old decisions, imagining that enough self-criticism will somehow reverse them. But the past cannot be punished into changing. You can learn from regret without building a home inside it. Try replacing the question, "Why am I so far behind?" with a more compassionate one. Given what I've lived through, what makes sense about where I am? This is not about making excuses. It's about creating an accurate explanation. Responsibility is most useful when it is grounded in reality, not cruelty. So, how do you begin loosening the belief that you're behind? First, define what ahead actually means to you. Not what looks impressive, not what would silence other people's questions. What kind of ordinary day would feel meaningful? Think about how you want to spend your time, who you want around you, what responsibilities you're willing to carry, and what kind of peace you want to protect. Second, the direction from deadline. You can want love without deciding that it must arrive by 30. You can build financial stability without believing that your current bank balance defines you. You can pursue meaningful work without demanding that your career follow a straight line. A direction helps you move. A rigid deadline often makes you panic. Third, reduce comparison inputs. This doesn't mean becoming jealous or bitter about other people's success. It means recognizing that attention shapes perception. If certain accounts repeatedly make you feel defective, step away from them. Curate your environment with the same care you would give your diet. Fourth, measure progress backward. Instead of constantly measuring the distance between you and your ideal future, occasionally compare yourself with where you were 6 months or 2 years ago. What do you understand now that you didn't understand then? What boundary can you hold now? What pain have you survived? What habit, however small, have you begun to change? Progress is often invisible when you only look toward the horizon. And finally, choose the next honest step, not the most dramatic one. Send one application, save a small amount, make one appointment, take one class, have one difficult conversation. A meaningful life is rarely built through a single heroic decision. It is usually built through repeated contact with reality. Feeling behind in life is painful because it touches something deeper than ambition. It touches belonging. You fear that everyone else is entering adulthood, success, love, or stability, and that you are being left outside. But life is not a race with a single track. There is no universal sequence in which a person becomes worthy. There is no age at which uncertainty becomes unforgivable. And reaching a milestone later does not make it less real. You can acknowledge that you want more without treating your present self with contempt. You can regret lost time without wasting today punishing yourself for it. And you can begin again without pretending that starting again is easy. Maybe you are not where you expected to be. But unexpected is not the same as failed. The question is not whether your life matches the schedule you imagined years ago. The question is whether you can meet the life that exists now and participate in it. Because your next chapter does not need permission from your previous timeline. It only needs one honest step from where you actually are. If this video gave words to something you've been feeling, share it with someone who may need the reminder. And in the comments, answer this question. What is one expectation you're ready to stop measuring your life against? Subscribe for more videos about psychology, personal growth, and the hidden patterns shaping how we see ourselves.